always asks, "Are you sure you want to go live?" Yes.
Are you sure though?
Right. I'm
Are you
sure.
sure?
I'm sure, motherfucker. All right, and we are live on YouTube, and now we are live on Instagram. Let me just make sure that your audio is working.
Hopefully it is.
Yeah, I hope so too, because I'm sure as hell these people don't just want to hear me talk. All right, now we just clicked you on. Boom.
Sweet.
All right, I'm starting to get the hang of this, man. I'm starting to get the hang of this.
Can't always do in person, unfortunately.
Dude, I know. And like I was so hesitant to do this stupid freaking over the internet one, right?
Yeah.
But or like these, I don't know, over Skype basically. I was so hesitant to do this because the I feel like it's so much better in person. Like the body language and the way that you communicate with people is so much better. But I don't know. Whatever, we're doing it, bro.
I've seen the last couple live streams. They've been pretty good. So I've tuned in. The
Thanks,
the
man.
quality is still there.
Perfect. I appreciate you tuning in. Yeah. Are you
So,
drinking coffee? What'd you just drink? Oh my god, dude. I thought that was coffee, bro. I was like, there's no
no
way
way.
this
No
guy
way.
is that unhinged that he's drinking coffee at
No.
9.
So I don't know if you can tell, but
Whiskey?
it's Scotch. The glass. So spent some time in Okinawa, and while we were over there, they've got this glass factory towards the southern end of the island called the Ryoku Glass Factory.
Okay.
So it's like this open air glass factory. They've got four different fires going, and they're blowing glass, and they do all these different sculptures and everything. So it's really cool to go see.
Sweet.
But I picked up a couple glasses while I was down there. And then my buddy, before he went back to Okinawa last year, brought me a bottle of 15-year Glenlivet. So I'm like, well, he gave this bottle because he couldn't take it over to Japan with him.
Yeah.
Might as well drink it in my Japanese whiskey glasses.
Ah,
So
that's pretty cool, dude. That's sweet. Um what were you in Japan for? Or
the
Okinawa?
Marines, I was over
Ah,
there for the
that's right.
Marines. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. The
Oh, cool.
nice little Marine Corps flag in the background.
Yeah,
So
let's preface this conversation with that. So this is Preston, guys, for anybody who hasn't seen the podcast with Preston. And he is a military dude, right?
former
Former
military dude.
military guy.
That was a past life. That was a past life. Feels like a lifetime ago.
Former military guy, jujitsu practitioner, and what do? You do sales, right?
Uh, Operations, but right now I'm working with sales and post sales teams.
Dope.
So
Cool.
yeah,
But he is super well versed in politics. At least anybody is way more well versed than I am in politics. So we are going to talk about Trump and Kamala, the throwdown, the absolute shitstorm that happened the other night. Dude, I'm going to be completely real about this. I think that if you were impressed with either party's performance, there's got to be something a little bit wrong with you.
a little bit off.
Yeah.
There was I saw a tweet the other day. Um, Darren Rovell tweeted out. He's like, "I feel bad for our country, but this is tremendous content."
Oh yeah.
And so I would say like loss for the political climate of our country,
Mm-hmm.
but an absolute win for the meme universe.
Yes, dude. The amount of content, like you said, this is great for content.
Oh,
The
it was
amount
a
of content that
meme
has
gold
been
mine. It was
produced.
amazing.
Oh my gosh, dude, it's so good. To be honest with you, the ones about like, the ones um about the people eating the animals or whatever, dude, I'm losing it.
I
I'm
thought we
losing it.
hit like peak memery
Hmm.
with Hawk Tuah in 2024. I thought that was going to be the capstone of memery in 2024.
Yeah.
And then I saw the debate and I'm like, there's no way.
We've hit a new level.
We've hit a new level, and it's only September. We still have to get through November. I was like, oh, this is gonna be fun.
Dude,
So
speaking about the Hop Tua girl or the Hawk Tua girl. Sorry guys, I don't pay that much attention to meme culture. But Bruce Wayne, what's up, dude? Thanks for being on. But Jake Paul sponsored a podcast for her, like started a podcast for this girl.
yeah, I've kept up with it a little bit, and it's been really interesting because she's been on a few podcasts and stuff and said like, yeah, I'm gonna milk this for everything it's worth. And it's like,
That's amazing.
that's the American dream. It's like, we got instant stardom. Like, this is my 15 minutes of fame. I'm going to take every minute of it that I can. And like, great, get every dollar.
Is she talented at all? Is she smart? Like, what's the deal with her?
I don't know anything outside of the meme and a couple clips from podcasts that I've seen her on. And it's like, I think she's just a random Midwest girl who became meme gold and then has hit platinum status, and so she's taking the ride.
Yeah, Bruce Wayne says yet to be seen, probably talking about her talents. We'll see. Maybe she's one of those OF talented girls, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we'll see. That's a whole nother rabbit hole for a whole nother time.
Yeah, it is for sure. Anyways, let's what are some of the biggest takeaways that you got from this debate?
Okay, so I'm going to preface it, put the disclosure out there. When I do these types of discussions, I try to stay as apolitical as possible. I'm, as I said in a previous podcast, I'm more an observer of what's going on. Like, I'm a registered independent. I try not to fall in the trap of subscribing to one ideology or the other. So if you're a Trump fan, I'm probably going to offend you. If you're a Kamala fan, I'm probably going to offend you. Because quite frankly, politicians shouldn't be the stars you look up to. These are supposed to be servant leaders.
Yeah, not a football team.
Public servant. The reason they call it a public servant is like, you are supposed to be serving the public. Right. Like, this isn't, you almost look at a politician like you should feel about them the same way you feel about the plumber, which is like, I call you, you fix my problem, and then you go away.
And mad respect though. Mad respect for
yeah. I'm absolute respect for the trades industry. Yeah. But like, it's this ideological or idyllic worship of politicians is just, it's been insane. And so I'm hoping that, we can have discussions where we can reach a middle ground. And I think most Americans are there, where it's like, yeah, like if I actually take time to sit down and think about how I feel, what my opinions are on certain topics, we all come to the same general conclusion and land in the same place. But let's talk about the debate. This is one person's opinion. And as I said before, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. Sorry if we get censored on Instagram for saying that, but
say whatever you want.
Yeah. My observation was, if I'm looking at the lens of the debate from and I don't mean this in a demeaning way, an uneducated voter's perspective. And what I mean by uneducated is, I don't mean like academically. I mean, like, you're not listening to a news related or political related podcast on, I would say, at least a weekly basis to understand all the dynamics that are going on. That's what I mean by uneducated. If you're looking at it through that lens, I have to say that Kamala trounced Trump.
No. How could you say that?
I know. I told you I was going to offend everybody on this one. And like, that's my hope. If I offend everybody, then I won. But if you're not tuned in to the political scene, she came off as polished. She came off as articulate. She spoke very well. Didn't seem to get flustered. And in fact, from a optics perspective, the little face she did, that face she made and continued to make throughout the debate, almost came off like you're not in my league. And I felt like if I was watching a boxing match, Trump was on the defensive the majority of the night.
Yeah.
I think going into the debate, Kamala hasn't really defined what her policies are,
Yeah.
let alone how she plans to achieve that if she becomes the president. Like, how is her and her administration going to achieve those things? She hasn't even said what those things are clearly and plainly to the American public.
Yeah.
So Trump had the opportunity to define that in the American public's mind, and I think he missed that opportunity. Now, that being said, I don't think it was a huge detriment to Trump, and here's why. I think it was clearly obvious. The real, I don't know if you want to call it winner, because ultimately I think it's a loss, was corporate media. And the reason I say that is because I think ABC opened the kimono completely and said, like, yeah, sorry, we're team Kamala here, and that's just the way we're going to go. And so for anybody that follows any type of alternative media is going to look at that and say, like, oh yeah, my distrust in the media, corporate media, just went up if it wasn't up already. I can't trust anything these folks say because they're over here fact checking him. They're over here interrupting him. They're throwing softballs and multiple choice answers at Kamala. And it's like, and she didn't really give any answers within the debate. Yes, she was articulate. Yes, she was refined. Quote unquote looked presidential, but there was no substance there.
Yeah, I didn't take anything away from that debate that she was going to do as president whatsoever. Not one thing.
One key thing sticks out in my mind.
What's that?
So you're a small business owner. I'm working on building a small business. The opportunity economy piece does stick out in my mind, where she said specifically, we're looking to give a $50,000 tax credit to small businesses. Like, that piece I heard and I go, oh, I resonate with that. Like, there's a lot of people that want to start owning businesses, and getting that small business tax credit would be a great thing. I think most Americans can get behind that. Like, we can talk about the economic climate. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far. But some of the dynamics that our generation as millennials should be thinking about is there's a bunch of baby boomers, and I don't want to say boomers as derogatory, but there's a bunch of baby boomers that are of age for retirement, that own small businesses. Millennials and Gen Z are going to have this huge opportunity to buy cash flow positive businesses here within the next decade. So if you're like, hey, I don't want to be working in investment banking my entire life, and I just want to own a business that I can pay a manager to run and just generates me cash flow. Hey, I'm going to go buy this storage unit business from Bob down the street that's about to retire, and Cindy's got this laundromat. I'm going to go buy that too. And now I've got two cash flow positive businesses, and now I can go sit on the beach drinking Mai Tais. Right.
Yeah.
Like, so that was the one piece of policy out of the 90 minutes that I was like, okay, like, substance, great.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything else outside of that. It was more of political attacks and character attacks. And it's like, okay, that's not helpful to anybody.
Well, which was interesting too, because basically the first thing that Kamala opened up with was, you are going to hear a lot of personal attacks, and she was insinuating that,
and lies.
Yeah, and insinuating that it would just come from Trump's side, but she didn't exactly do ad hominem attacks, but it was basically ad hominem attacks the entire.
It was passive aggressive.
Yeah, super passive aggressive, and so, like, I think even if she did make a point and this goes for Trump too, because to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of either of them either. Like, do I think that there's a lesser of two evils? Absolutely. Um, well, I don't know. Actually, that can be
So
argued kind of
we
both
can get
ways.
into that and
Yeah.
that's really where I want to go is like the debate
Hmm.
was it was entertaining from an entertainment value of two people just yelling at each other on a screen. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, I can watch the crescendo of The Bachelor and see the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, what's really concerning to me, um, but I'm hopeful at the same time, is I'm coming to this conclusion the more and more I dig into it. And so everybody get your tinfoil hats on
Let's
because
go.
this is my conclusion, my opinion.
I've
So I
always
want to
got my
preface
tinfoil
that.
hat on.
Yes, make sure you have your tinfoil hat on. Um, money has corrupted politics to the point where we are losing the opportunity to save the republic.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that, and I texted you earlier today to ask you a very specific point, and I'm going to somewhat date myself, but hopefully most millennials have seen this. If you've seen the movie Wall-E,
Yeah.
great movie. Hate me if you want for saying it's a great movie, but towards the end you find out what happened to the human civilization,
Hmm.
and they're all stuck on these ships because the earth is just completely destroyed. It's uninhabitable. Wally finds like one piece of life, and they end up taking it back, and they're like, okay, yeah, we can go back and inhabit the earth.
Hmm.
But if you notice, it's one corporation that runs everything, right?
Yeah.
We've gotten to a point where I think we're running the risk of, if we haven't already, becoming a corporatocracy. And I think we're there, but I think it's still reversible in the sense that you look at the politicians that are out there. Um, most of them are taking big time PAC money. Political action committees are
Hmm.
funneling tons of money into them and saying, hey, we're going to give you all this money. It's going to help you win elections and stay in power, but you're going to do our bidding while you're there.
Hmm.
And I think that is the driving factor behind the policy. What's leading me to this is look at all the Republicans that have jumped to the Kamala endorsement.
Hmm.
If you really look back, like a lot of these problems have stemmed. We had the Clintons in the 90s, or we had the Bush, we had the Clintons, we had the Bush again,
Hmm.
we had the Obamas, we had a brief four-year stint of Trump, and then we were right back to that same group of career politicians in Joe Biden.
Hmm.
Has life gotten better? No, because their interests are Democrat and Republican. Their interests are aligned with corporate money.
Hmm.
They're not aligned with your interest.
100%. Yeah. So, this definitely falls in line with a lot of the tinfoil hat theories over the years, right? So, my whole stance on politics since I have been young, probably around 16 or 17, I was basically like, I don't want to say indoctrinated into, but I was told from a very young age that the politicians that were in power were just puppets and they didn't mean anything. Not like it was all basically just it was all just optics and entertainment for the most part, right? And that
Yeah,
there was somebody like we'll say it, the Illuminati was the people like behind the scenes,
yeah.
basically, right?
It's kabuki
Um,
theater.
yeah, yeah. So to me, as I've gotten older, is it really this like weird group of people that are secret society? It could be, but more importantly, when you just look at it from a surface level type thing, it's corporations. And corporations drive policy, they drive mandates, they drive, so industry, everything that actually makes a country thrive and
If
grow.
you don't think Boeing and Raytheon and hopefully my breaks don't get cut tomorrow. But those types of folks have a large say in what foreign policy is and how we enact foreign policy. I've got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
If
Well,
if you if you don't think that the teachers union has a lot of sway over what educational policies are put out there from an administration, again, like you're delusional at that point.
have you read into the Rockefeller education system
100%.
stuff?
So like this is not a conspiracy theory. Like
Yeah.
this is fact. Rockefeller went to the educational department and said, "I need more factory workers."
Yep.
And so the education system was set up in such a way
Yeah.
that you produced K through ninth grade or K through 12th grade, you produced factory workers, people, you produced employees,
Yep.
from everything from like, oh, I'm Pavlovian conditioned to a bell goes off and I change tasks,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
to the way the desks are structured, to the way that curriculum is taught.
Yep.
It's like, hey, no, like sit down, shut up for 8 hours a day, do the work that I present to you, and you'll be happy about it.
And to take it a step further, now this might actually get banned on Instagram. So anybody that's watching this, here we go. But then when you take it a step further, then even like the Nazi regime and how that had implications in like our education system now too, right? The fluorescent lights, the way that desks are set up in a classroom, the fluoride in the water, all these like really crazy things that are starting to now come up into the mainstream that people are talking about. I mean, even people like Andrew Huberman, right? When he's just talking about it from a health perspective, when it comes to like getting sunlight in the eyes and not staying in a dark room and being in, what's it called? I don't know, like fluorescent light type stuff, right? He talks about that. Even from a health perspective, now they're starting to see and they want to shift, right? But that all started from corporate greed, basically, back in the day, right? And so I think it's pretty interesting to see, because I guess a question that I would have to ask you is it something that can be saved, not becoming too corporatized, or are we so far gone? Because in my scope, in the way that I view things, it has always been this way. Like in the 1900s up until now, it has always been this way. Is there a way to get out? And some people might think, basically and after I make this statement, I just want to read some of the comments on Instagram real quick. But some people may think like Trump is the new coming of Jesus. I tend to think Jesus is the new coming of Jesus, right? he'll come back to life. But some people think that because he's not a career politician, that doesn't mean, or that means that he doesn't have potential to be influenced, or he's not already compromised, right? And so something like one of the things that I would have to say is just because it sounds good and it feels good doesn't mean that it is good.
I would say that he's already compromised.
I would too, 100%. I mean,
What?
just because it may be compromised more in the way that you like or that you want to see doesn't mean that it's not anything bad. Because I think that we have to take a real nuanced perspective when it comes to politics and understand that like some liberal policy is good for everyone. Some conservative policy.
You have to have both sides.
Yeah.
You have to have both sides.
Yeah, exactly.
The human condition requires that we progress, that we evolve, that we get better.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need liberals to push the envelope there.
Yeah.
You also need conservatives to put the guardrails around it and slow it, not stop it, but slow it down so that we can understand second and third order impact.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was listening to a podcast. So Lex Friedman had the host of the Young Turks on. Great listen.
Cenk Uygur.
Yeah, great listen.
Okay.
Great listen.
I used to actually really like the Young Turks back when I was a liberal.
I've listened to several of their podcasts. Again, I listen to both sides of the spectrum. But listening to him talk to Lex, this is where a lot of this train of thought has come from, where we've become this corporatocracy, and he talks specifically about 90% of the politicians taking the money.
Yeah.
And that money is corrupting in nature. And they end up doing the bidding of whoever's paying the bills.
Yeah.
And so you asked, can it be saved? And my answer, and maybe this is too hopeful, but do I think Trump's the savior of it? Probably not, because again, he's in the pockets. I do think this next generation of politicians are going to be accountable and aware in a different way than we've seen before. And the reason I say that is because there's a different variable that's going on now. You look at our parents. Our parents, you know, if your parents were anything like mine, it's like, you know, mom was the breadwinner in the house, working 60 to 80 hours a week. Dad was a pastor or is a pastor, and you know, worked his tail off. But folks didn't have, you know, our parents and Gen Xers didn't have a lot of time to dedicate any mental bandwidth to this. And that's not any fault of their own. It's like, hey, you know, I had to make a living. I had to pay a mortgage. I had to support a family. You know, I had to do all these things, you know, and then Gen X was told like, hey, if you want to be successful, you got to go to college. So go to college. And so, yeah, you're in debt. And by this time, most Gen Xers have paid off their college. Us millennials are over here still paying off college debt, you know. So, you know, we're working ridiculous hours. We don't have the bandwidth to go, hey, what the hell's going on over here? But I think we're starting, because you've seen this shift in corporate culture for millennials and Gen Z going, yeah, I don't want to fucking work 80 hours a week. Like that's not a life.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm going to be satisfied with a salary that allows me to live, but I also have time to enjoy activities and think about things. And so I think we're on the precipice of a revolution. And by revolution, I don't mean like American Revolution in the 1700s. I'm talking of like almost an enlightenment of like, hey, this is actually what's going on. We need to fix this now. And the reason I say that is because you saw two sides of the aisle diametrically opposed on social issues. It was AOC and and a few of the other squad members, and a couple junior Republicans come together and say like, hey, we're going to ban stock trading while you're in office. Now the bill didn't pass, obviously, but we're starting to get recognition that like money in politics is a bad thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not here to create generational wealth. You're here to serve the public. If you want to go create generational wealth, go start a company. And so I am hopeful that we have the opportunity to get away from that. The other piece of this is, and the reason I think Trump is hopeful for vastly different reasons than the majority of the MAGA community do. They think, you know, like you said, some people think he's the savior, right? I think Trump's playbook outlined a way for an outside entity to win an election, which is you have to get through one of the two parties' primaries. And if you get through that, you have a chance at getting to the presidency. So Trump was an establishment Republican, whooped everybody in the Republican primaries, and then won the election. I think that's possible on both sides of the aisle. And I, to be perfectly frank, don't care who it is, but I want to see somebody who can do that. Like, think what you will about his politics or his economic theory, Bernie Sanders almost accomplished this.
Yeah.
Why did they make such a push to kill Bernie Sanders on the Democratic ticket? Because he's not an established Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, he does toe the party line when it's necessary, but he doesn't take money from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, you can call him whatever derogatory name that you want to associate, but he's not in any corporate pocket. And so why didn't he win the election? He's not on the take.
Yeah, so I guess, oh man, so many things there. How does the change get made, right? So like if we're talking like let's talk in Trump's terms, if there really is a deep state, right? Just for the sake of argument, if there really is the thing that I think that there is, right, where there's like corporations, there's evil, people can, sway things however they want, right? How does the change get made? Because I still don't know if I even believe that voting actually does something. So if there is to be a change made, because like there's things like Congress, and then there's like, senators and all these different people that can like stop I don't want to say stop voting from happening, but like we saw it with the last election, how many things they tried to put in the way in order for Trump to become president. And I'm not even talking about like voter fraud or anything like that, right? They tried to just like tarnish his name and do all these different things, right?
Yeah,
So
I
we
mean,
don't even have to get into voter fraud.
I think anybody that follows politics even remotely should have seen Zuckerberg's note to Congress, right?
Yeah.
Where he's like, yes, they did come to us and they did pressure us
Yeah.
to suppress certain content and raise other content when it came to COVID, when it came to the election.
Mm-hmm.
And he flat out said, hey, like, I was wrong to go along with that pressure, and it's not going to happen this cycle. But therein lies the hope,
Mm-hmm.
right? That yes, it happened, and there are going to be powers that be that continue to try to influence it. But now you're starting to see a wave of folks stand back up to that.
Mm.
Just in the admission and Zuckerberg making that public is a step in the right direction. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I guess it would require, like, in my opinion, right, it would require like people to not be cowardly, I guess, right? So like Zuckerberg can say things like that for sure, but at the end of the day, if he thinks that his life is in danger, how much of that is actually going to like stay consistent or stay true?
I mean, think about the CEO of Telegram. He probably thinks his life's in jeopardy, right?
Why? What happened there?
So Telegram is a very uncensored platform started in Russia. The CEO of Telegram is currently detained in France. And the charges in which he's detained on are very vague in nature. And in France, you don't have due process. You don't have the same American justice system of innocent until proven guilty. It's you're guilty until proven innocent, right?
Yep.
And so you see sort of like, if you want to call it deep state, but like I more call it probably the best term is like globalist community.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about it, like the Davos group.
Yeah.
Actively trying to suppress, which our founding fathers thought was the most fundamental right, which is the right of freedom of speech. It's like, yeah, you got to be able to talk about these things, and if you can't talk about these things, then you can't get the effect rolling that we need to get rolling in order to make a change. And so I would say, like, there are people, it takes both courage, but it also takes the resources.
Mm-hmm.
And you're starting to see folks that have both the courage and the resources come to the forefront because it's all been so fucked at this point.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think it's FUBAR, which is, fucked up beyond all recognition.
Yeah.
We're close. We're not quite there yet, though.
Yeah.
And there are people going, hey, like, this doesn't seem right. You know, I for me, the verdict's still out on Elon Musk, but like if there truly was a, you know, a global um, Illuminati organization, do you think Elon Musk would have been able to accumulate the wealth and the influence that he has? Probably not.
Well, my opinion on that is that he played ball for a really long time. Did you see like the really weird stuff that he was posting? It was either last year or 2 years ago when he took over Twitter and X. Like the really like he put his revolver next to his bed, next to like a certain like book or statue. I forget what it was. And basically he was like sending a message, right? So my opinion on that is that he played ball for a really long time, and then he like either he like made a shift because he thought things weren't like right, like maybe he like felt bad about how he played ball. I don't know, but I think one thing that's interesting is we can kind of see like what you're saying. I agree with, but what's scary is that they whoever they is, right? You see this stuff happening at like really small scale, and I think it's going to start happening at larger scale pretty soon.
It happened
Somebody
at larger scale.
Well, yeah, but one person specifically who's really popular, because you said you need resources, you need courage. The last thing that I think you need is influence those categories. But Andrew Tate is like the perfect example of somebody that this is happening to, right? The deep state attack on him. So I know a lot of people that are listening probably don't even know much about Andrew Tate's like actual content or anything like that, right? But dude, look at him. He's been in and out of Romanian prison for 2 years. He's been on house arrest. They still have not charged him with one thing. And he's saying things against the mainstream narrative. You know, he's telling men to be men again. He's saying, don't cut off your dick. He's doing like all these, like, you know, say what you want about him. Say he's a misogynist. I don't really care. The whole point here is that there are charges pressed against him. And in Romanian law, it's the same way where you're guilty until proven innocent. And they have a way of just kind of keeping you how they want you to be, without ever actually charging him. So like he doesn't have any actual charges that he's been found guilty of. They just are saying, we have these charges. Now you're going to be punished for it. And so what really scares me about American politics because of that, and, you know, just worldly politics, I guess, is that you see that happen, and then you see the stuff happening with Trump too. And again, I'm not like a huge like Trump fan. I'm not like sucking his dick by any means. You know what I mean? But you see all these charges in such a convenient time frame that they're trying to pin against him. And I think the only reason why it hasn't happened the same way that it's happened as my example with Andrew Tate is because Trump's influence 1 billion times fold of Andrew Tate's. So people aren't just going to like, if Trump goes to jail, there's going to be like BLM times 4 probably.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think it'll go that far.
You
I
think that
don't
they're
think
more
that'll go.
reasonable?
Yeah, like like so. I think you asked me before. It's like, are we headed to civil war?
Yeah.
If something big were to go down, like we talked right after the Trump assassination attempt,
Yeah, we were together.
and I, I don't think we're to that point because, like, you know, I'm a cautious guy. You know, I got to take care of my family, and so like part of that is, you know, you got to think through like worst case scenario. And my wife asked me the other night, she's like, you know, if there's a civil war, like what do you think is going to happen? Like, not is there going to be a civil war, but like what would we do? Like where would we go? How would this unfold?
I'm coming to your house. I'm driving to where you live
More
at.
welcome to, like, you know, everybody can see we've got a
Yeah,
nice little setup here. We can work out, we can shoot guns in the backyard,
that's right.
keep target practice. But I think most Americans agree, and sorry for the background noise, my wife's about to pull in here. Give me 1 second while
Yep,
hopefully
just
y'all
pause
can't
real quick.
hear that garage door
Try
noise.
try to remember what you're gonna say. I'm just gonna respond to some of these comments.
Yep.
Bruce Wayne, you're active, dude. I love this. He's a plumber by day. He said Kamala didn't really say anything. Talking about neocons. Trump is not a career politician. Facts. And unfortunately, we're in a two-party system. He doesn't think that we're near civil war either. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with everything he's saying there. Um, I I don't think you can. I don't think you can make the change outside of the two-party system. I think you have to have a candidate like Trump, who is not an establishment politician,
Mhm.
come in and win the primary in order to get elected to the highest office in the land. Um, but to say what I was saying, like I think most Americans, like if you sit down and you have a cup of coffee with somebody, or if you have a whiskey with somebody, um, you sit there and go like we generally agree on most things,
Yep.
and even if we have disagreements on the how we get there, we agree on the end state. Um, like uh, this was an interesting conversation I wanted to get into you or get in with you about was the topic of abortion. It's a hot button topic, especially for this election.
Yep.
And as we saw in the debate, Kamala sitting over there screaming, he's going to sign a nationwide abortion ban, and Trump's over there going, no, like I did the right thing, which is kick it back to the states where it always
Mhm.
should have been. It's like it's not whether there should be abortion or there shouldn't be abortion. It's like, no, the power of the people should decide whether or not they want it.
Mhm.
And you look at most Americans and they say, you know, should abortion be legal? And they go, yeah, to a point,
Mm.
right? And to that point is different for everybody. Um, and we have that same kind of sentiment a lot around a lot of these topics.
Mhm.
Like that's what frustrates me to no end about. Uh, you can call them Republicans, but it's more the conservative side of the aisle where they get wrapped around the axle about these social issues.
Mhm.
And it's like, sorry guys, that's a distraction to what's actually going on. It's like you're worried about like the one trans track person that is uh, beating the four other high school athletes that weren't even going to get a college scholarship to begin with.
Yeah.
Like, why are you getting wrapped around the axle when we've got much bigger problems like the money in politics?
Yeah.
Um, and so most of us agree on 70% of the issues out there to a degree.
Mhm.
And so I don't think it's going to be that civil war. Do I think there could be pockets of violence? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can agree with that. Like, I definitely don't think there's going to be a civil war for a couple reasons. I think that number one, the Trump touting gun people who post on Facebook,
We
Instagram,
talked
all this
about this.
stuff.
They're cowards.
Yeah, I think that they're way more pussy than they would ever like to believe. None of them probably have been in an actual fist fight or anything like that. And then the liberal guys, right? Um, are they more, are they more like more violent? I don't really think so. I think that there's like a really silent or a really loud minority of the liberal like people that you see like the Antifa type, that are loud and, violent and stuff like that, but I just don't think that like it could actually entice like a lot of violence. I do want to say something though about the the abortion and the trans thing and because this is something when I was younger I was really like I don't give a shit about any of this stuff, like why do you guys even care, because I can't, like I used to be super liberal, I didn't even know what that meant. um so one thing though as I get older that I think that the Republicans or the conservatives are trying to do when, it might be one out of however many high school athletes, right, that took away the scholarship. What I think the overarching theme is that they want to nip it in the bud before it like becomes an actual problem. And for me, as somebody who like I don't even want to say this because it's kind of like appeal to authority, right? If I'm like as somebody who coaches a lot of like girls or whatever, right? And I don't like to do that at all, but um, I think that I think that when you let people get away with something, they tend to take it really far a lot of times, right? Like you give them a little bit of permission, then they just want to try a little bit more. And then they want to try just a little bit more. And it becomes like a really big thing. So yeah, we can shift the conversation to abortion and all that if you want to, for sure. Because I think that that was a hot button issue too.
We'll,
But
we'll stick to politics.
yeah,
I mean, but it's part of politics because
yeah,
the cultural issues do matter.
yeah,
Um, and I don't say that. I don't say that like the one trans track person doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, like for me, for you in combat sports, like biological sex, bone density, muscle, uh, tendon strength,
Mm.
like those things are variables that not only decide the outcome, but could mean life or death for somebody that is in that ring.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
but conservatives have got so wrapped around the axle, like let's look at and this conversation kind of faded out.
Yeah.
But the boxer in the Olympics, female
Yeah.
boxer,
Yeah.
turns out she was biologically female.
Well, okay, hold on, real quick on that. So somebody, there's this guy Derek Moore plays more days. Do you know who that is?
Yep.
So
Yep.
he did a whole analysis on it. So the IBA didn't want to release the information of like what exact test she failed, because supposedly the Olympic boxing committee was in bed with Russia, whatever. That's what they were saying, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so
Well, hopefully, and if you haven't, please do. This is like
yeah,
I'm not getting paid for this, but go watch. What is the documentary? Is it Icarus?
Icarus, yeah,
Yeah, go
yeah,
watch
yeah,
Icarus. Excellent documentary. If you haven't seen it, it's on the Sochi Olympics and the Russians' steroid usage and how
yeah.
they're trying to beat the Olympic testing.
So, dude, I got flamed over that, the boxing thing, the woman boxer. But it turns out he did a full analysis on her blood testing and on her gene report, because that was actually what she failed, was the
Yeah,
genealogy. And she's intersex,
yeah.
apparently. So now what the reason why that upsets me, and this is good for politics too. The reason why this upsets me so much is because, was I emotionally charged when I first made my statement? Absolutely. But then were the people who came at me emotionally charged as well? Far more emotionally charged, I would say, than I was. Now, the reason why it bothers me is because this is something that politicians and media do
They
so
play off the
much.
emotions.
Not just that, but language to me, like linguistics, dude, it's so freaking important. The way that you speak, like the the report that the one CNN article or whatever it was, MSNBC article, that a couple people sent me, said assigned at birth, the gender that she was assigned at birth. And I'm like, why? Why is it that? Why can't it be what, like, what she was born or whatever it is, right? Because then it turns out she's intersex, and then I guess the parents make the decision at birth what the person is going to be, blah blah blah. I'm not going to get into the intricacies of that. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor. But that's a problem, because now, right, politicians will run off of issues like that. You know, they'll say things, they'll be like, she was a female and blah, 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 all this stuff. And then suddenly they're garnering, like you said, emotion. It's appeal to emotion. And then they're getting more votes. And it's all based off of language. Like, you hear Kamala Harris, what she did when Trump said the thing about the Haitians eating, people's pets or whatever, right?
Yeah,
This is crazy. That never happened. And the reason why she said that never happened, dude, is because it wasn't cats and dogs. It was
yeah,
other animals,
yeah.
you
And
know?
and so we're 2 days post debate, and one of the most surprising thing that I have yet to hear was Kamala didn't, or at least her campaign didn't instantly come out and say, "Yeah, that thing he said about the Haitian immigrants, that was weird." Like, because that was their tagline for the longest time. Like JD Vance said the thing about crazy cat ladies, and that was way out of context. Um,
What did he say?
so JD Vance was talking about uh, in a sense, it was towards child tax credits, but really it was more of a thought experiment around um, we want to have a thriving population in our nation. And so if you want to give the right to vote to a 16-year-old, like probably we should put more weight to uh, adults that choose to have children,
Mm.
right? And the way it got spun was, oh yeah, the crazy cat lady doesn't have as much of a weight in voting as, say, a parent does.
Mm,
And so it was all blown out of context, um, because there have been several attacks from the left on the nuclear family.
mm-hmm,
Like, this is true.
mm-hmm,
Um, and I would say this is fringe left attacking the nuclear family for various reasons. Partially for what I would, I always try to um, assume positive intent, and assign ignorance before assigning malice.
yeah,
But it's like, hey, minority communities have been disenfranchised for so long that, like, hey, they're just trying to punch back at this point.
yeah,
And so, like, somebody that doesn't fit into the stereotypical nuclear family, may have emotionally charged feelings about um, the perception of the nuclear family in the United States and in culture. Um, and so there was this whole back and forth, with some fringe articles from the left attacking motherhood, and is it even good to be a mom? Do women actually want children? And JD Vance's point was like, hey, it's it's a good it's a net positive to have a family, and to have kids, and so, like, we should incentivize that.
mm-hmm,
um, but he made a comment about, like, yeah, some crazy cat ladies, and the the Democratic Party took that and was like, yeah, they just say weird things. And so for like about 3 weeks it was nothing but like, yeah, Trump and JD Vance are weird. And it was like it was a very weird line of attack, to use the cliche, um, on the Republican side of the aisle. So, very interesting times.
yeah,
Like,
super interesting.
I wish we would get back to people like actually debating the policy, because right now we're not seeing any of it from either
Well,
side.
yeah, I think genuinely, dude, what it is just like people are trying to win a popularity contest, right? And
Hmm.
that's basically like in these times with meme culture and all that stuff, it is kind of what you have to do. I
Hmm.
mean, social media has given us so many good things, but it's also given us a lot of really bad things. Like nobody really cares about context for anything, right? Especially when it comes to politicians. They only care about context insofar as the context fits with their narrative and what they actually want to hear or see. So something that
But why
Bruce,
is that? Why do you think that is?
why do people care about context insofar as
Why do you think that they only care about what fits their narrative?
mm, that's a good question. I
Because,
think
like if we sit in a room
yeah.
and I sit down with a conservative and I sit down with a liberal
Hmm.
and I say, is it do you think it's good that Americans can make a affordable wage that allows them to live comfortably in the United States?
Hmm.
Do you think either one of them would disagree with that statement?
I want to say no, but I think there's caveats for both. So I think
Just
that,
that statement, no other context.
yeah, I, I think the answer would be, ooh, I don't know, dude. I don't, I think, I know the question that you're asking, but I think that from a conservative, they'd probably have the questions of how is it benefiting the whole? And for the liberal side,
But why would a conservative say, how is it benefiting the whole?
well, because you always hear you. I don't know if that's exactly what I mean to say, but you always hear the conservatives saying like the pull you up by your bootstrap, basically carry your
So
own
that's
weight.
the individual. So and so
Yep.
that's why I asked that specific question.
Hmm.
Is that's the individual, pull yourself up by the bootstraps? Like, that's been the conservative talking point for a long time.
Yep.
Um, and it's like, okay, yeah, I didn't say they didn't have to have uh, physical and mental autonomy and um, uh, to get to that financial stability. Like I didn't tell you how we were going to get there. It just said, like, do you think it's appropriate that Americans have the opportunity to make an affordable living?
Yeah. I think that the only contention then would be because they would both say yeah, but then the contention would be like, how do they get there? You know,
But
because
like that's the point. Is like we can
yeah,
agree, like that is the end state. Now we
yeah,
can have debate, like we can, but that's the problem. Is we're starting off on a start. Our politicians are starting off at a starting point of I'm going to I'm going to trigger this emotional response
hmm
so that you're immediately us versus them.
yeah,
Instead of saying like, hey, we all agree that a not let's take another issue. Um, if you said a liberal and a conservative in a room together and you said, should we let terrorists across the border? They'd probably both say, no, we shouldn't.
yeah,
Right? Like, I think we're all in general agreement that if you are in fact a person that wishes ill intent on American citizens,
hmm
that you probably shouldn't be here.
yeah,
Now we have a common ground. Let's start a debate from common ground. Now we can debate the how.
hmm
Like we agree on the what, but now we can debate the how.
yeah,
We don't do that in American politics or American political theater is what I would call it.
yeah,
We start with like, hey, I'm going to close the border, or I'm going to grant amnesty and asylum. We don't start with like, hey, like, yeah, we shouldn't let people that intend on harming American citizens into our country. But
hmm
if there are people seeking refugee in this country that do intend to uh, be a productive member of our society, then that's a net positive. Like, let's find a path forward.
yeah, for sure. I agree with you 100%. I just don't know that this might sound, um, I try to be positive, but I don't know that many people, especially voters, have enough depth to be
They don't
there.
have enough bandwidth. It's
Yeah,
not a
well,
depth problem. It,
that,
they
but
just don't have
also
the
I think
time.
that people, I don't know, dude. I think okay, the only pushback that I have there is like the time thing, right? Like you and me both know, like you're like we always like you train people, jujitsu and stuff like that. I train people. We both have this like if it's important to you, you're gonna make time for it, right? Most people, politics, let's just be honest, is not important enough for them. It's not important enough for me most times, right? So, but the point that I'm gonna say is, I think that I think that most people, their problem is more so that they're self-righteous rather than they don't have time, and they want to be part of something, which is not bad, right? They want to be part of something, and I think that a big problem has to do with virtue signaling from both sides, by the way, not just from the liberals and not just from the conservatives. Where I think the big problem is when is that I don't know if I don't know if people don't have the time. I think it's that they want the claps from their party. They want the claps from their neighbor. They want the people who are within their tribe
But it's
to
progressively getting harder in both tribes.
well, okay.
It's progressively getting harder in both tribes. And here's why I say this.
Yeah.
Like some folks have said, like, oh yeah, if you're like, yeah, I'm voting for Trump, like, oh yeah, welcome to the party, like, great to have you. Like, I don't think that's necessarily the case. Look at all the neocon really doesn't have a definition.
Yeah, right.
It's a derogatory term for people that don't rep, uh, registered Republican politicians who uh, don't vote your way, and in this specific instance, for Trump, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, you're a neocon. Like, I'm going to give you this dismissive term, and I'm going to turn you to the side. Liberal, the same way. It's like, prove how liberal you are. Like,
Yeah.
oh, like you're all for gay marriage and equal rights, and equal protections under the law, for gay and lesbian couples. Great. Like, I also need you to be on board with transgender surgeries for minors. It's like, oh no, sorry, that's a line too far. Well, then you're a Nazi.
Yeah.
And it's
Well, yeah,
like,
totally. Yeah.
so like both camps are becoming so polarized
Yep.
that most Americans are like, fuck you both.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be either of you because both of you are so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to give me this pejorative term or label me this pejorative term and then turn me away because I don't agree with one of the things you say. It's like, yeah, most of us like don't have the bandwidth to think about all this.
So
And
I think it like comes down to though too is like soundbite culture, right? And clipping culture. I think
clickbait.
that yeah. Well, this has been like a huge shift in politics if you haven't noticed is clipping, right? So like people will take little portions of, you know,
But why do
you've
they
seen
do
it,
that? Why do
reels,
they do that?
15-second. Well, I think for divide, right? I think it's to divide and to get people on for super
Simpler than that.
important what?
Simpler than that.
Huh?
What drives it?
Emotions.
What's the underlying motivating factor? Why do
For
they want to drive
clipping?
them? Yeah. Why do they want to drive emotions?
I think to get us divided and to win.
Money.
Yeah, well, for sure. That's always
It's
that's always the
money.
root.
It's money. It's greed. It's
Yeah,
greed.
for sure.
I,
So,
I
but
don't
what
think
my
it's necessarily like the intent to divide. I think it's like, hey, I could post this like emotionally charged clickbait. I'm going to get a lot of clicks on, if I'm corporate media, I'm going to get a lot of clicks on whatever platform I'm on.
yeah,
If I'm on YouTube, I'm going to get a lot of clicks. And even the haters are driving my revenue stream because they're
mhm,
creating comments, which drives more traffic, which bumps me up in the algorithm, which creates more money for me.
yeah.
Like, why would I
Well,
not do that?
so my point though there is that to bring it back to like the first question of, or when you said that you like, and I wish this too, that we could all sit down and just talk about the thing rather than how to, like, because we can't even get to how would we do it, right? So like we at least agree on one thing. But part of like a big reason why I think that we can't do it, why we can't just sit in a room and be like, we all agree that everybody should have a living wage, like that, is because there's all these emotionally charged things coming at us from either side. Like you say too, I'm agreeing with you now. People don't have the bandwidth to like read between the lines for sure. They don't have enough bandwidth to actually pay attention because they don't have enough mental energy, emotional energy, anything like that,
Yeah.
to do that. So when they get these like nice sound bites, like, oh, this is what a liberal thinks. I'm liberal, so I'm over here, and now I'm gonna start spreading this stuff too, and then that's where I think like the virtue signaling and the clapping comes in and stuff, and that's how people like kind of divide with each other, and that's why we can't sit in a room and be like, well, we all agree on the living wage thing. Why don't we talk about it more? Except Jubilee, the YouTube channel, have you seen them?
Mhm.
They're doing a pretty good job at it. Let me read this comment really quick. Bruton Adams, then how I presume, I met her in Hawaii. This is cool. Then how I presume is the Constitution and laws that intended to establish a, quotes, level playing field. The difference is the right says you are responsible for your actions. The left says if I failed, it's everyone's fault and the circumstances you all put me in. Yeah. I mean, I agree with that for the most part. I think there's a lot of things that conservatives do not take responsibility for, though, too.
Let's circle back to a comment you just made, and I'm trying to form this train of thought here.
Yeah.
You can. We need to be individual thinkers,
100%.
and people are forming their thoughts based off of the clickbait material, but it's not really a thought, it's a parrot, right?
Yeah. Yep.
You're parroting because you don't have the bandwidth to sit down and actually think, what do I actually think about this topic?
Yeah.
Like, I can tell you very clearly what my stance on abortion is.
Yeah.
Like, and some people I may take flack for this, but morally wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, legally, I don't think the government has. I don't think it's the government's prerogative,
Yeah. They're not mutually exclusive.
right? So I can say like, "Hey, I'm morally opposed to having an abortion
Mm-hmm.
with caveats, or without caveats." But I also don't think it's the government's prerogative to intervene one way or the other,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and so we need to take those thoughts. So read that comment one more time.
Yeah. She goes, the how. I think that I said then how, but the how I presume is the Constitution and laws that intended to establish a level playing field. The difference is the right says you are responsible for your actions. The left says if I failed, it's everyone's fault and the circumstances you all put me in. She says she disagrees. With which portion?
Yeah, with which portion? I'd be interested to know.
I
Because I don't think the Constitution necessarily intended a level playing field. And you got to define what you mean by level playing field. Like if you mean level playing field in terms of equal opportunity,
she said abortion is what she disagrees with.
and that's fine. Like
Yeah.
that's we should disagree,
Yeah.
and then we should have a discussion. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is something that should have a discussion on. What I think uh, people get confused with strong opinions, which I think they strongly hold, when in fact they loosely hold those opinions.
Oh my gosh. Yes. If you can be shook on your opinion based off of like a 2-minute conversation, you didn't really have an opinion.
Right. And
Yeah.
and that's not to say that you're inferior of a person. It's just you may not have committed the time to thinking in depth about that topic.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I think that I also think this. I think that people think they always need to have an opinion on everything
Mhm.
or they're going to seem uneducated or whatever. I actually think it's the more educated stance to admit that you don't know or that you
Or don't
don't
have
have
an
an opinion.
opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's a lot of social issues that I just do not have an opinion on because I haven't taken the time to think about it.
Right.
So I can't just form an opinion based off of it. She goes, comment on abortion. We are to protect all life born and unborn.
And
I agree. That's my
and
Christian worldview.
yeah, and
Yeah.
morally I agree with that view. That's when you have to get into like separate
Church and state.
separation of church and state.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the point. That's the how
Yeah.
we should have a discussion, because a lot of us would agree, like, hey, protect born and unborn life.
Mm-hmm.
Some people would disagree with that. Let's have a discussion about that. Let's sit down and have an intellectually honest conversation about that.
Yeah.
And so those are the points that we should sit down and discuss.
Yeah. We should talk about Kamala and Trump's little stint with that real quick, just since we're on the topic. When Trump said that there were abortions being done up to 9 months and even after, and then she called him and said that that wasn't true. What do you think about that? She goes, and the government should establish the laws that protect those without a voice. I think
Fair
here's
point.
my hot take on abortion, okay? Real quick. It's being used as birth control for the majority of situations. That's my
Yes.
hot take on it. And
Yeah.
I don't think that that's acceptable. I have a very skewed and not skewed. I have a very mixed opinion on my Christian worldview says abortion at all times is wrong for sure. But then there's this little part of me, right, that thinks about the exceptions to the rule, right, which are those really
It's empathy for the human condition.
exactly. So it's empathy for that and for somebody going through another hard time, but just because a hard time was imposed on somebody doesn't mean that you impose another hard time on another person. So, and this is a philosophical debate rather than like a lawful debate, I guess. But I think that law actually has its origin in philosophy, right? So this is kind of how you come to making laws and things of that nature. So it's like Charlie Kirk actually said something really, really profound in my eyes. This was just a couple days ago that I listened to this, and he said, um, you know, the case that people always bring up, which is like rape and incest and stuff like that, and you know, somebody getting pregnant, and they say that you don't think that abortion should be allowed in those circumstances, and he goes, so do we just, you know, when an evil thing happens, might we make something good come from it, which would be a beautiful baby and you know a flourishing life? And man, I'm like, yeah, I agree with that, but man, would that be hard for a 14-year-old? You know, I don't really know what to say in that circumstance. I don't have an opinion. You know,
Well,
like
let's face it, a 14-year-old doesn't have a fully functional or fully formed prefrontal cortex.
yeah,
So, like, can they actually make that decision and that
right.
determination? Um, but like, you're getting into a much deeper conversation of where is where should law be based?
Yeah.
Um, is it based in morality? What is the morality of the land? We have become a very secular culture.
Yeah.
And so, like, you can argue the pros and cons of removing religion from everyday life. And, like, that is a completely different, deeper discussion, but bleeds into, like, the legal repercussions and policy repercussions that we set.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
think we're ready to. I think we've devolved in maturity as a culture
Mhm.
to be able to have that type of conversation.
Yeah, I actually think that it's the most important conversation to have when it comes to politics and law. Um, because I think that morality drives everything. And you know, being a secular, like I used to be atheist, right? Like super hardcore atheist. And the crazy thing about being secular and like being in that space and driving politics from it or even rules, laws, whatever you want to say, is that it's subject to a person's individual thought, right? And so I used to have a friend who said that he didn't believe that evil was real. So things couldn't be evil. And I was like, why do you think that way? And he's like, because evil is dependent on what you think evil is. And somebody might have a worldview that what you believe evil is just fine. I was like, I don't think so. You know, I think that inherently in us, there are certain things that are just in our nature that we don't jive with, right? Like, at least I would like to think that that's true. And so to me, the whole thing with politics, law, and how I think that actually theocracy is probably something that we should at least think about, right? And explore, not being a secular world, is because we need to answer to something higher than just the human condition.
The trick with that,
What was that?
I said the trick with that, like the tricky part about that is theocracy has some of the same pitfalls that something like communism has,
Yeah, for sure.
which is if no mortal has ultimate authority, bad actors will exploit that authority and turn it into authoritarianism.
Yeah, 100%.
So you can see the perspective of the secular worldview say, hey, when we had theocracies, that power was abused and bad things happened in the name of that authority. And evil was done in the name of a higher good.
Yeah. Yep.
You make the same critique of communism. It's like, communism in theory is great and well, and like everybody's happy and you have this utopia. But in practice, bad actors consolidate the power and become authoritarian.
Yeah.
And so, like, you're trying to solve for the human condition where there is capability for evil and capability for good in all of us.
Yeah, for sure. I think that regardless of the the type of government that we have, right? There's always going to be the chance for that. There's always going to be the chance for bad actors. There's always going to be the chance for even infiltration, people infiltrating and things of that nature.
Using something good for the purpose of evil.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. I guess my overarching theme there is that I don't know if that we can leave a lot of these like really profound issues up to human nature and human thought, right? Like I've been deep in the Bible lately, and one of the things that I find so interesting about the Bible, now this is kind of shifting our conversation, but one of the things that I find so interesting about the Bible is how much of a personal development guide it is. How much value there is in that book. And I told myself that I'm not going to read another personal development book until I feel like I've gotten enough from the Bible. And I just don't know if I'm ever going to reach that point.
Two thoughts on that. One, every personal development book, and I've read a lot of them, and I'm not. That's not a brag. That is like a critique on myself. Most of them say the exact same thing. It's just that you just need a reminder. You already intuitively know what to do.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just you need a reminder and a swift kick in the ass to go do it.
Yep.
So there's that. And the Bible is a great swift kick in the ass to go do some of those things. One of the passages that I've been meaning to revisit, and I'm paraphrasing. You probably know this passage better than I do, but render unto Caesar what is due to Caesar, render unto God what is due to God. Right?
Never heard that.
And I don't want to completely botch this because I need to revisit this passage because that's the impasse that I'm finding myself at personally, which is like there are things that the government mandates that I may not agree with. And is it my duty, both biblically and civically, to abide by those? Because in the end, all that matters is God's judgment in the kingdom of heaven, right? And so I need to go back and revisit that passage and meditate on that to really understand the applicability to the crazy political and political is probably the best term, landscape that we live in today.
Yeah, I like that one. I'm gonna have to dig in there.
Let me give me like 30 seconds.
Yeah,
let me do the quick Google search.
for sure. I don't know if I want to read her follow up comment because it seems pretty personal, but
I don't take offense easily.
No, not to you, Like personal herself.
If it's personal to herself, I like to respect privacy.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I'm flattered that she feels comfortable to share that on comments. Context is important for that passage. It was intended to trip Jesus. That's what she said. You can read it. Huh. What exactly is the passage? Or what chapter?
Looks like Matthew 22:15-22, and
I'm
Mark
in Matthew right now, so I'll
Mark
get there.
12, 13-17.
I'm learning so much by reading this Bible. It's unreal.
So,
She says, first, God owns all things.
yeah.
You'll have to shoot that passage over to me.
Yep. Interestingly enough, it's on taxes.
Taxes?
Yes, because it was a question phrased to Jesus by the Pharisees on whether or not he felt taxes, whether or not he would be opposed to the taxes by Caesar. And so, again, I need to spend more time in it. This is me saying I am ignorant at this point, and I'm going to dispel my ignorancy by spending time in study and meditation.
There we go.
So,
nice. We should
I
all be
will-
in our Bibles.
well, Bibles, philosophy, all of it.
Yep. She said, second, God ordains those put in charge. What is that word? CHA.
In charge.
Oh, charge. My bad. Third, God allows us to suffer the consequences of our choices. That's true.
Yeah. So this is Wikipedia, so take it for a grain of salt.
Yeah.
They anticipated Jesus would be opposed to taxes, as their purpose was to hand over to the power and the authority of the governor. And Jesus first called them hypocrites, then asked one of them to produce a Roman coin that would be suitable for paying Caesar's taxes. One of them showed him a Roman coin, and he asked whose head and inscription were on it. They answered Caesar's, and he responded, "Render unto Caesar the things that are which Caesar's, and render unto God the things that are God's." So,
I like it.
I think my initial hot take on that is like money is inconsequential.
Yeah.
But I'd have to delve deeper to see where else that is applicable.
Yeah. She said, four, God says we should adhere to laws. Fifth, he does expect us disobey when called. Yeah. What's another quick takeaway that you got from this last debate between Trump and Kamala? And then I want to also get your take on, do you think that this sways the public vote?
I don't think it sways the public vote.
Okay.
That's the easier question to answer. I think the people that were going to vote for Kamala Harris before the debate are still going to vote for Kamala Harris. I think the people that were going to vote for Donald Trump are still going to vote for Donald Trump. I think there is a small percentage that are still undecided because they hate both candidates.
Okay.
They just cannot stand both candidates. And the reason RFK Jr. had such a following was, and not, I don't say like such a following that he was winning by like, 30% of the vote. I mean, like less than 10% of the vote.
Yeah.
Because they just couldn't stomach voting for either candidate. And so I think there is a fraction of the voter population that's like, man, these are both really bad candidates, and I don't know who I'm going to end up voting for. And like, if I was to straw man and steel man both of them, you look at Kamala. Has the world ended in the last 4 years under Joe Biden? No. Has everyday life gotten more economically uncomfortable? Well, it depends on who you are and how much you have in the stock market and how much you started with prior to the administration. Um, so I would say, like, I don't think you're going to see much deviation. The fear mongers are saying, like, if Kamala gets elected, World War III is going to start.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's certainly a possibility, but that's a possibility under any type of governance. On Trump's, if I'm steel manning Trump, you already saw what his governance looks like for 4 years. If you liked that, if you enjoyed that, and you could get behind, or if you could get past the shorthand way of speaking, like he speaks in tweets. That's
Yeah.
really what he
Yeah.
does. It's like 150 characters or less.
Tweet speech.
Like if you get, so there's no context, you can't detect sarcasm. That's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Like if you get past that and you liked where you were between 2016 and I would say 2019, like let's not get into 2020, uh, then you know that's the way you're going to go. But if I'm going to straw man it, it's like, dude's a loose cannon. He's going to do what he's going to do, like regardless of what anybody tells him. So like if he's like, yeah, I've got to show that I'm the biggest bro in the gym and I've
He's gonna
got
go
to
in the
drop
sixth
some
inning.
bombs to do it. Like there's a possibility that he could do it, and like
Yeah.
that's terrifying. And so like both the fringe cases, like the most likely scenario is nothing really changes, regardless of who ends up being president. Like, yeah, groceries may get a little more expensive, or cost of living may get a little bit more expensive, or you may have less taxes. But then you could be butthurt that the rich are less taxed. Like, those are the things that could happen in the next 4 years, regardless of the candidate. Like, it's marginally different.
Yeah.
The extremes tend to be the same outcome. It's like annihilation via World War III or annihilation via World War III with nukes. Like, take your pick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you look at both the extremes and if you look at like the likely scenario, there's no real change between both candidates. And that's kind of like where I was at the onset of this conversation, is like both of them are in the corporate pocket. They're going to do what is in their for lack of a better term, their sugar daddy's best interest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're going to be. And then in 4 years, we're going to have the same discussion of like, who's the best candidate. At that point in time, like I'm hopeful that a candidate that is not beholden to corporate masters is able to break through the primaries. And then we have a viable candidate to run the country.
Yeah. I'm hopeful, but also a little bit skeptical, when it comes to this election. Like I feel like the first few weeks, no matter who is elected, is going to be strange, to say the least, right? Like I feel like it's just going to be very strange and weird, and everybody's going to kind of be on edge, wondering what's going to happen. And then I like to say, whoever gets elected president usually doesn't affect our lives all that much anyways. There's certain things like gas prices go up, groceries go up, things like that. But we're not really going to notice much of a difference that we didn't see before ever.
You want to leave it on a real tinfoil hat conspiracy?
Yeah, let's do it.
Why does the Super Bowl take place in February?
Why does it take place in February?
Yeah.
Are we talking about some astrological stuff, or what's it called? Some astrology stuff?
Astrology stuff? No. But like, think about it. The inauguration's in January. So like you have this big hubbub in November over, you get 3 weeks of consternation over who won the election. And then you get to Thanksgiving. Nobody gives a shit about anything except for eating turkey and time off between Thanksgiving and New Year's. Like obviously Christmas is in there. And then you come back, they inaugurate in the beginning of January, and you're like, oh, we got this all over again, and then nobody talks about it because the Super Bowl's coming up and everybody's wondering who's going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Hey, there we go. So
Like
yeah.
the Super Bowl's in February because it's one big distraction from the election cycle.
Yes, dude. Yes. There we go.
There's your big conspiracy theory.
That's the conspiracy theory tinfoil hat thing. Well, dude, I appreciate you hopping on live with me at freaking 10:30 at night. It's been fun.
Yeah. Get up and train jujitsu at 5 o'clock in the morning. It'll be fun.
Are you going at 5 a.m.?
Yeah, 5 a.m. is my time.
Oh man, dude, that's
When you got kids and work and everything, like, got to fit it in where you can.
yeah.
Like you said, like we're the type of people that if it's a priority, you're gonna make it a priority. You're gonna make time for it.
Yeah,
So.
dude. I've been waking up early recently again.
It sucks.
It does, but dude, so I listened to this thing real quick. Andrew Huberman and Chris Williamson did a podcast.
Oh, I just finished it. Yeah.
So you heard that thing when he was like, it takes 3 days to reset the clock.
Yeah, it's 2 painful days, and then you reset your circadian rhythm.
Bro, that's exactly what my experience was. And like it was before I listened to that podcast, I was like, what the heck? This took like no time for me to get used to. And it was just because my son is in school now. So I'm like, I got to get up earlier so I can make my coffee and I can make him lunch for school and blah, blah, blah. And I can eat and blah, blah. And, but the benefit to this has been that I knock out way earlier too. I'm like, this is past my bedtime now. I've been in bed by like 9:15, asleep by 9:30 most nights now.
Oh yeah, this is definitely way past my bedtime. But I'll tell you this. So it's funny to listen to that podcast because we've recently got this beautiful property and we're extremely blessed to have it. But I had a tree fall down and I had to carve up the tree and get it toted out and everything. And so out there with a chainsaw. But as I'm finishing the last log, the tree fell up on the top of the hill of the property. And I'm like, man, this would be really cool. So I took the chainsaw and I spent about 30 minutes just with a chainsaw and I carved out 3 of the logs. 2 are the base of the bench. And then I cut one in half lengthwise and I put a bench down on top of the hill. And like, as you know, awesome as like the gym setup is and the house is, and like that's all great. The best spot is to go up and sit on that chainsaw made bench with a cup of coffee first thing in the morning, get the sun in the eyeballs, get the sun on the face, and it is absolutely amazing. Like there's nothing that can replace it. And I set the bench up in such a way that it is east to west. So you get the coffee in the morning, you can go watch the sunrise, and then in the evening, I grab my whiskey and go sit down and watch the sunset.
That's so cool. That's dope, dude.
So
yeah, hell yeah, bro.
Nothing. There's no money that can buy that type of experience.
That's great, dude. Well, hey, dude, I appreciate you so much for hopping on this pod with me. If you guys did like it, please hit that like button, subscribe if you are new. Preston, anything you want to say to anybody?
Hey, think for yourself. Take in all the inputs, form your own opinion. Don't have to necessarily share it, but be open to discussion. We're all humans. Treat everybody accordingly.
There you go, man. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you, dude. Thanks so much.
Catch you all later.
All right, bro. I'll text you after this. See ya.